November 8th, 1942. The desert wind carried the smell of dust and gunpowder across the rocky hills of Tunisia. A young German soldier, Wilhelm Schmidt, crouched behind a crumbling wall, his carabiner 98K pressed tight against his shoulder. He had trained for this moment since the first days of the war. Load one round, aim, fire, pull the bolt, reload, repeat. This rhythm had conquered Poland, crushed France, and driven deep into Russia. He believed it was unbreakable until today. Across the barren field, the American infantry advanced in perfect formation. They moved fast, low, and confident. Schmidt had been told they were amateurs, men who had never seen real battle. But as he raised his rifle, the sound that met him was not the familiar crack of single shots. It was a wall of sound, an unending roar of semi-automatic fire that tore through the desert air. Within seconds, the world he understood collapsed. This is not just a story about a rifle. It is a story about pride, blindness, and a weapon that rewrote the rules of war. The M1 Garand, the semi-automatic rifle of the United States Army, was more than a piece of steel. It was a message that innovation could defeat tradition, that industry could overpower ideology. In the hands of ordinary soldiers, it became the equalizer, proof that courage backed by progress could change the fate of nations. The year was 1942, and the war was reaching its turning point. While German officers trusted in centuries of discipline and precision marksmanship, America had quietly armed its men with something different. A rifle that did not pause, did not falter, and did not forgive hesitation. The story of the M1 Garand is the story of how a simple mechanical idea transformed the battlefields of World War II and reshaped the psychology of an empire that once believed it could not lose. For more than a decade before the war, German military doctrine stood upon a single conviction: precision was everything. Every rifleman was a craftsman, every bullet a tool of perfection. The carabiner 98K was not just a weapon, it was the embodiment of the German way of war, disciplined, deliberate, and devastatingly accurate. Adopted in 1935, the rifle symbolized a nation that believed technology served discipline, not the other way around. When the German army swept across Europe, this philosophy appeared unshakable. From the fields of Poland to the streets of Paris, the bolt-action rhythm dominated the battlefield. Officers boasted that German marksmanship could not be matched by any army on earth. The rifle's 5-round internal magazine and its smooth bolt were trusted companions to every soldier. To them, rapid fire was the mark of desperation. Calm, measured shooting was the mark of superiority. Then came North Africa. In the barren deserts of Tunisia, the myth began to crumble. When German troops first encountered American infantry in Sisi, November of 1942, they expected chaos and hesitation. Their intelligence reports described American soldiers as untested, dependent on machines, soft from industrial comfort. The Germans were told to expect weak men armed with inferior weapons. What they met instead was a wall of steel and sound. The M1 Garand did not behave like any rifle they had faced before. It spoke in thunderous bursts, 8 rounds fired as fast as a man could pull the trigger. There was no pause, no bolt to cycle, no moment of silence between shots. German soldiers like Wilhelm Schmidt found themselves trapped behind cover, unable to raise their heads without being met by a storm of bullets. The mathematics of survival had changed. A trained German rifleman could fire perhaps 15 aimed shots per minute, each requiring him to pull the bolt, realign his sights, and squeeze the trigger again. An American armed with a Garand could deliver 30 to 40 rounds in that same minute, each one accurate, each one deadly. In the span of 2 minutes, the difference became catastrophic. The very doctrine that had defined German infantry, discipline and precision, was rendered obsolete by a machine that turned every soldier into a rapid-fire marksman. At first, German officers dismissed the reports as exaggeration. They blamed poor leadership, bad weather, or American luck. But the pattern repeated from Algeria to Tunisia. Positions that should have held for hours fell in minutes. Units reported unprecedented rifle fire, not from machine guns, but from every direction. A single American platoon could unleash a volume of fire that previously required multiple machine gun teams. To the German mind, this was not only a tactical shock, but a cultural one. They had been raised on the belief that German engineering and discipline were superior to anything mass-produced in America. Now, in the heat and dust of North Africa, that belief died one bullet at a time. The Carabiner 98K was a masterpiece of precision, but it was a masterpiece from another era. The American rifleman no longer fought by the old rhythm of aim and reload. He fought to a new beat, the continuous pulse of semi-automatic fire that never gave the enemy time to breathe. In the confusion of combat, the difference between pulling a bolt and pulling a trigger became the difference between life and death. As reports filtered back to Berlin, the disbelief hardened into denial. Senior officers wrote that Americans relied too heavily on firepower, that they wasted ammunition, that they lacked the artistry of true soldiers. Yet, behind the front lines, younger officers began to whisper the truth. The Americans had changed the rules. The very weapon they mocked had become the cornerstone of a new kind of warfare. For the first time in the war, the German infantryman faced an opponent who could match his training and exceed his firepower. And in that moment, the proud foundation of the Wehrmacht began to tremble, not from bombs, but from the relentless rhythm of 8 shots echoing through the desert. By the end of 1942, the illusion of superiority was gone. The Carabiner 98K was still reliable, still accurate, still deadly. But it was no longer enough. The battlefield had evolved, and Germany had not. The Americans had arrived with a rifle that did not just fire faster, it fired the future. Long before the desert battles of North Africa, a quiet man worked in a small workshop in Massachusetts, chasing perfection through steel and patience. His name was John Cantius Garand. Born in Quebec in 1888 and raised in America from the age of 11, he was not a soldier, not a general, not even an officer. He was an engineer, a man who believed that precision and simplicity could live together inside a single weapon. For nearly 2 decades, Garand labored at the Springfield Armory, perfecting his design. He tested every spring, every piston, every bolt until the machine moved like a living thing. While much of the world still believed a rifle must be cycled by hand, Garand envisioned one that could harness its own energy. Gas from each fired round would push a piston, eject the spent casing, and chamber a new bullet, all in the blink of an eye. His idea faced resistance. The old guard of the Army clung to tradition. They claimed semi-automatic rifles were too heavy, too complex, too unreliable. But Garand's quiet confidence never faltered. By 1936, the rifle was adopted officially as the United States rifle, caliber .30 M1. Few understood then that this decision would change the face of war itself. As Europe plunged into conflict, American factories began to awaken. When the attack on Pearl Harbor came in December 1941, the sleeping giant stirred fully. The United States turned its foundries, its mills, and its people toward a single goal: victory. The M1 Garand became the heartbeat of this transformation. In Massachusetts, Springfield Armory roared to life, its assembly lines stretching farther than the eye could see. In Connecticut, Winchester. Repeating arms joined the effort, its furnaces glowing through the night. Workers poured in, farmers, machinists, clerks, and for the first time in history, women by the thousands. They worked side by side with men, their hair tied back, their hands blackened with grease, their hearts steady with purpose. On the floor of those factories, race, gender, and background blurred into a single identity: American. Every trigger they assembled, every barrel they polished, every rifle they shipped carried more than bullets. It carried belief. By 1943, production reached impossible heights. At Springfield alone, more than 3 million rifles rolled off the lines. In Detroit, automobile plants that once built cars now produced engines of war. The Ford Willow Run factory built bombers. The Garand lines built equality. Germany, watching from across the ocean, could not comprehend it. They had believed in elite craftsmanship, small batch perfection, weapons built by master gunsmiths. America believed in something else: mass precision, machines building machines, an army of citizens arming an army of freedom fighters. When the first captured Garands reached German engineers for examination, disbelief turned to dread. The weapon was simpler than expected. Its gas port design, elegant. Its reliability, unmatched. "They have done the impossible," one German officer reportedly wrote. They have made perfection repeatable. While Germany struggled with its own semi-automatic designs, the G41, the G43, production lagged behind. The German rifles were heavy, prone to failure, and costly to manufacture. The M1, by contrast, was built by the hundreds of thousands every month. Each rifle functioned identically, interchangeable, reliable under mud, snow, or sand. Behind this miracle was not only engineering, but spirit. The American people had turned production into patriotism. For them, building rifles was not about killing, it was about protecting freedom. In every polished receiver, they saw the face of a son, a husband, or a brother on the front lines. The M1 Garand was no longer just a weapon. It was the symbol of what America could achieve when united. It represented the strength of democracy, the ability of free individuals to come together and outbuild a dictatorship. In Germany, the generals clung to the belief that quality would always defeat quantity. But as thousands of Garands crossed the Atlantic, that belief withered. The Americans had achieved something extraordinary. They had transformed industrial might into a moral force. When General George Smith Patton called the M1 the greatest battle implement ever devised, he was not exaggerating. He understood what it represented. It was not only about firepower, it was about a nation's capacity to believe in itself. From the design tables of Springfield to the battlefields of Europe, the rifle carried the same promise. Innovation guided by purpose could overcome arrogance guided by pride. The industrial miracle was not just measured in rifles built, but in hope restored. In the heart of every American worker pounding steel in a factory or tightening a screw on a rifle stock, there was a silent vow. We will outfight tyranny not because we must, but because we can. And in that vow lay the true power of the M1 Garand, the quiet strength of a free people who turned factories into fortresses and blueprints into victory. By the spring of 1943, the war had entered a new rhythm. The sound of the M1 Garand echoed from the deserts of North Africa to the mountains of Italy. Every battlefield it touched revealed the same truth. Firepower had become the new language of war. When American troops landed at Salerno and Anzio, the German defenders expected another North African lesson. But they were wrong. The M1 Garand turned every hill, every street, every trench into a storm of bullets. German infantry, armed with their trusted bolt-action rifles, were trained to fire with precision and patience. But against the Garand, patience was death. At Salerno, squads of American riflemen advanced by fire and movement, half covering, while the other half charged forward. Every man in those squads could lay down a curtain of bullets without breaking sight. German positions that had once required heavy machine guns to suppress were now overwhelmed by ordinary riflemen. The battlefield equation had changed forever. Reports from the German 94th Infantry Division, captured after the fall of Rome, painted a clear picture. They spoke of engagements where German troops were pinned down by rifle fire alone, unable to return effective shots. Even when they held the high ground, the volume and continuity of American fire made it impossible to lift their heads. "They are like machine guns," one soldier wrote, "but they walk." By the time the invasion of Normandy began on June 6, 1944, that description became prophecy. On Omaha Beach, waves of American soldiers stormed the sand under relentless German fire. The defenders of the 352nd Infantry Division believed their concrete bunkers would hold. They were wrong. The Americans fought upward, one rifle at a time. Their M1 Garand spat defiance with every pull of the trigger. 8 rounds, a metallic ping, then another 8. Every soldier was a moving machine of precision fire. In the chaos of that day, the rifle proved not only its power, but its spirit. It did not jam in the sand. It did not hesitate under water or blood. It simply fired. German observers who survived the landings later admitted that their soldiers were outshot and outlasted. Their tactics, based on suppressing the enemy with machine guns while riflemen maneuvered, collapsed completely. The Americans needed no such balance. Each rifleman was his own suppression team. The difference was not just mechanical, it was psychological. The German soldier, trained from youth to believe in the superiority of German steel and discipline, found himself facing an enemy whose fire never stopped. The myth of invincibility cracked, replaced by a growing realization. Technology and unity had outpaced pride. the Sturmgewehr 44, Germany's desperate answer to the Garand, arrived too late. It was revolutionary, an assault rifle capable of automatic fire, but production delays, material shortages, and strategic confusion doomed it. For every 50 carabiner rifles, only one new weapon reached the front. The war machine that once boasted unmatched innovation was now chasing the shadow of its own arrogance. In the hedgerows of Normandy, where combat was close and brutal, the M1 Garand became the soldier's best friend. It was heavy, yes, but it fired true. When one soldier fell, another picked up his rifle and kept moving. The weapon asked for little and gave everything. American tactics evolved with the rifle. Officers no longer thought in terms of machine gun nests or coordinated volleys. They thought in terms of rhythm, waves of semi-automatic fire that broke defenses before they could respond. The Garand allowed the infantry to fight fluidly, like a living organism of synchronized courage. Statistics after the war told the story, with cold precision. Units armed with the M1 Garand inflicted disproportionate casualties compared to their numbers. Even when outnumbered, they won engagements at higher rates, largely because of sustained fire and reliability. The rifle turned training into instinct, and instinct into survival. For German commanders, it was a nightmare. Their men fought bravely, but bravery could not reload faster. They tried to compensate with more machine guns, with better tactics, with new weapons, but the foundation of the battlefield had shifted beneath them. The M1 Garand had erased the pause from combat. To the American soldier, it was more than a weapon. It was a promise that he would never face the enemy empty-handed or outmatched. To the German soldier, it was a constant reminder that the age of bolt-action warfare was over. As World War II raged on, the Garand's legacy grew with every battle. From Sicily to Normandy, from the Ardennes to the Rhine, it was there, steady, unyielding, and relentless. The rifle changed how wars were fought, how armies trained, and how nations understood power itself. It was not the largest bomb, nor the fastest tank, nor the deadliest machine gun that defined this revolution. It was a single rifle placed in the hands of millions. Simple, reliable, unstoppable. And through its metallic rhythm of fire, the M1 Garand told the world a simple truth. In war, the side that adapts wins. The side that refuses to change perishes. When the guns finally fell silent in 1945, the world was forever changed. The M1 Garand had done more than fire bullets. It had fired a nation's spirit across continents. In the aftermath of victory, its echo remained, not in the sound of its report, but in the legacy it left behind. The rifle became a symbol of balance between man and machine, discipline and democracy. In the hands of millions of ordinary Americans, it proved that freedom could be armed with both courage and innovation. On the factory floor, it had united a divided people. On the battlefield, it had given them equality in the face of fear. That was the quiet miracle of America's arsenal, a union of intellect and labor that the world had never seen before. World War II had begun as a contest of empires and ideologies, but it ended as a testament to humanity's capacity for adaptation. Germany's mastery of precision and form had met its equal in America's mastery of purpose. The M1 Garand stood at that intersection, a product of open minds, not closed doctrines. It reminded the world that even in war, progress can be born of necessity, and liberty can emerge from industry. For the German soldiers who faced it, the Garand was a revelation both terrifying and humbling. For the American soldiers who carried it, it was a companion, a piece of home forged in steel. And for those who built it in the heartland, it was a promise fulfilled. As the decades passed, new rifles replaced it. New wars demanded new machines. But none could erase what the M1 Garand represented, the moment when technology served justice, not domination. It became part of a larger truth, the same truth that shaped the outcome of World War II and continues to shape the conscience of nations. In every museum where a Garand now rests, beneath the dim lights and polished glass, it speaks without words. It tells visitors that courage can be engineered, that unity can be manufactured, and that freedom, when defended with faith and reason, can never truly be silenced. And so, we remember. We remember the engineers who designed, the workers who built, and the soldiers who carried this weapon across oceans and continents. We remember not just what they fought against, but what they fought for. Because the legacy of World War II is not merely a story of destruction, it is a story of creation. The creation of a world where ordinary people, armed with conviction and guided by hope, stood together against tyranny. If you believe that peace must still be fought for, not with weapons but with wisdom, then share this story. Speak it aloud. Teach it again. Because the lesson of the M1 Garand is the lesson of us all. That freedom endures only when ordinary hands are willing to hold the weight of its defense. The M1 Garand was not just the greatest battle implement ever devised, it was the heart of a generation. And its heartbeat still echoes through the memory of World War II, reminding us that progress, courage, and unity remain the truest weapons of peace.